Good afternoon. I'm Eng-Tat. Thank you for coming to my session. The title of my presentation is The Challenges Associated with the Teaching of Histology and What Can We Do About it. Okay, I will keep this fairly short because I've been informed that I should not have this thing more than 25 minutes. So I intend to be very candid about the presentation. So I'm going to speak from my heart, and I hope that at the end of this session, you will learn something about the problems that we are experiencing as of now in the teaching of histology, and what can we do about it. Right. So on that note, I'm going to share my screen, and we'll take it from there. Okay, I hope you can see my slides. So as promised, the title of my presentation is as follows. So what are the challenges that both teachers and students are facing in the learning of histology, and certainly also the teaching of it, and what can we do about it? So I will begin with a problem statement, and the truth be told, in the teaching of histology, for the longest time, we have been relying on a system of lectures, tutorials, and practicals, hoping that the students will understand the relevance of histology at this point of their education. And the hope is certainly when they go into clinical years, they will be able to apply this knowledge. But are we successful in doing all this? I think to be really honest about it, it has worked for a long time. And credits should be given to senior professors, faculty who have been, doing a good job in teaching generations of students in histology. So it is through no fault of theirs that this problem has insidiously surfaced. And why is that so? I think part of the reason is because the world has changed. And if you were to look at the picture in this slide, I think if you are really honest about it, you'll realize that in the teaching of histology, about as far as I can see, I think a lot of students have fallen asleep, and not many people want to acknowledge this, and they pretend that everything is good, and they continue to teach histology the way it has been taught for over the last few decades. So are we doing justice then to these students? Because I think what's happening at the ground level is when these preclinical students leave the first 1 to 2 years of their education, and then they suddenly find themselves in the clinical years. And in their conversations with the clinicians and their patients, they suddenly realize that they have to go back to the textbooks on histology again. So here is the problem. I think histology has been taught in a manner whereby a lot of times the emphasis is on the study of structures and the nomenclature. And because of that, there's a lack of clinical relevance mentioned during the class. So I think this is somewhat unfortunate because the students now have to try to dig out all those notes that were given to them in the first 1-2 years of their medical school, and then they will have to try to understand the relevance. So I think this is time not very well spent, and there should certainly be an attempt to improve on how we are teaching histology. So back to this slide. What in essence is happening is students have been falling asleep in class. So we do not want this. What we want is for the students to be totally engaged and to understand from day one why they need to study histology and how is it going to help them in their clinical work in the later years. So you really want students to be raising their hands, asking questions, as opposed to dozing off in class. So I then asked this question: what can we do about it, given what is happening now? So for a long time, as mentioned earlier on, we have been relying on a system of lectures, practicals, and also small group teaching to try to make the students understand why they need to know histology. And like I said, it has worked, for a great many years, but because the world has changed, the attention of students span has greatly reduced, and our greatest enemy is actually, in fact, the internet. So students often ask this question: sir, ma'am, why do we need to know all these details when everything is now available in the in their smartphone? So what should we do about it? What can we do to make the teaching of histology more interesting, or at least make them see the light so that they will be able to keep up with the teaching staff? So here in this slide, you see, the teachers trying very much to engage the students, using PowerPoints, virtual microscopy, etc. So this is very much a traditional way of teaching. So fast forward to some of the contemporary methods that we are now using to engage students. So here you see, we now attempt to keep up with the students in, the use of technology to help them understand the subject. So we use platforms like, for instance, Zoom, and then we use devices such as iPads, iPhones, Androids, etc. And all this information, like I said earlier, is actually available in the internet. So then we have to ask ourselves, you know, whatever we were doing over the last 20, 30 years, is it still relevant? And if not, what can we do about it? So with this slide, I'm just trying to bring home the point that we need solutions. If not, you will one day wake up and realize that, you know, histology is no longer featured so much in the timetable. Why? Because students think that it's not important. And certainly, I think some faculty will also experience you know, difficulties in the teaching of the subject, because their mastery of the subject is not as good compared to, say, the seniors. So what are some of the strategies that we can do or employ to teach the subject in a very effective manner? So given what's happening now in this pandemic, we certainly realize we have no choice but to teach the students using alternative methods, simply because, you know, there is no opportunity to have face-to-face session with them. So then we ask ourselves questions like, you know, will pre-recording be useful? And if it is useful, how can we best make use of it so that, you know, students can have the opportunity to study the subject at their own leisure, you know, and if they do have any questions, they can then come back to the lecturers and ask them, you know, specific questions. I also want to put forth the idea of, you know, in terms of engaging the students further. We can also use things like Kahoot, which is essentially a gamification platform to engage the students. So at least they will be, this will allow us to hold the students' attention. And in the next few slides, I'm again going to propose some bold ideas. And one of them is this possibility to engage sit-in pathologists to help to bring in clinical scenarios. And then, you know, the students will be able to understand why they need to study histology from day one. So what I'm trying to say is collaboration is very important. So I now intend to take you through some of my research data, and I hope that you will be able to give me some comments. And certainly, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them at the end of this presentation. So this is the abstract that I've actually presented to the organizers. So the background I've already told you so, because, you know, histology is a integral part of the medical curriculum, and, you know, students have to learn it. But unfortunately, given all the changes that has taken place, they are not totally engaged. So what we have done, myself and some of my colleagues, we got together and then we came up with this ideal to do a systematic review of what is in the literature. And then we formulated some surveys, and then also we got together as a group to discuss what are the challenges that is the faculty and the students are facing. And we wanted also to try to like I said, bring in some external experts, like for instance, pathologists coming into the class to do some co-teaching. So these were the results that we found, and over the next few slides, I will present it to you pictorially. And then later on, as we come to the end of the presentation, I'm going to again bring home this message of what are the possibilities out there that we can actually use, okay, to perhaps change the trajectory of the learning and teaching of histology. So with this slide, I'm basically trying to get you to understand that the students have changed, and we have to accept this. So you can see that apart from lectures, tutorials, and practicals, they now use a lot of online resources. Up to 71% of them actually do so. So then we ask ourselves questions like, is lectures, tutorials, and practical classes still relevant? So this slide is actually meant to bring home a point that one of my very senior colleague instilled in me, and that is how histology has been taught for a long time, in the sense that students have to digest so much content within a period of time, and then they leave the preclinical years, and then in the clinical years again, they realize now they actually forgotten a lot of the things that were taught. So it's not optimal. So what we want to do really is to teach them just enough so that they can remember these salient points, and then they can bring in the clinical years and then be able to apply this knowledge. So this picture is really meant to give you a sense. So in a shotgun blast profile, all the little dots that actually hits this bird are useful data. What is outside the bird profile, they are actually not that useful, because chances are students will not be able to use this data to their advantage whatsoever. So I asked a few simple questions in the research. And the first that I asked is, should the teaching of histology be transformed or reformed? And then we invited responses from teaching staff from at least 3 continents, namely Asia, Europe, and America. And this data were then further stratified according to the number of years that the teaching staff have been doing the teaching of histology. So namely less than 10 years, less than 20 years, less than 30 years, less than 40 years. So you can see from the graph, you have the sense that as the teaching staff, okay, as a teaching staff, if they teach less years, they are actually more open to the possibility of having the curriculum be reformed. And then next question I ask is, should histology be moved to the clinical years? So again, you can see from the graph, with this stratified profile, you realize that, as a staff engages in the teaching of histology more years, there is a tendency for them to say no, that they do not want histology to be moved to the clinical years. And I have my own understanding as to why this might be so. And I think the simple answer is because I think when you teach it for so many years, you have a sense of attachment to a subject, and you call it love or passion, etc. You then close off to other ideas as to how the subject can be taught. Another question I asked in my research is this, and that is between face-to-face and online teaching, which do you prefer? And like I said, I invited comments, responses from 3 continents, namely America, Europe, Asia. And the response is quite unanimous. You can see that most teaching staff actually prefer face-to-face as opposed to online teaching. And another aspect of my research, actually, I asked whether is it beneficial for the pathologists to sit in to do some co-teaching of histology. And you can see from the graph that 88% of the students who responded thought that it is a good idea to have a sit-in pathologist, for simple reason, because the lingual that the pathologists use is somewhat different from like myself, a histologist, teaching it, and also the pathologist will be able to make the teaching a bit more relevant by talking about scenarios, and with this sort of explanation, then suddenly the student will understand why histology is still relevant to their education, and hopefully when they go into clinical years, they'll be able to remember some of these stories, and if we're able to do that, then we would have succeeded in changing the trajectory of the education of histology. So as promised, I'm going to finish up very soon in 1 to 2 minutes time, and this is actually my results, which I've try to explain to you in my previous slides. So it appears that there is a bit of a generation gap between some of the more senior teaching staff and the younger teaching staff. But what is very apparent is students actually want to be engaged with hybrid approaches, and they actually will cherish the opportunity for pathologists to actually sit in the histology teaching as well. So this is my last slide. So I hope I have planted some thoughts in your mind as to what are some of the challenges that is facing the histology teachers and students, and what can we do to actually make the subject a bit more interesting and hopefully change the trajectory of the subject so that it will not be obsolete one day. So with that, I end my presentation, and I hope to hear from you. Any questions, comments, or anything that you want to share with me. So thank you for your time. I'm now ready to take questions. I hand the mic now back to the organizer. Thank you.